aspecting Jupiter in Scorpio. Mars and Leo aspecting Jupiter in Scorpio, blowing up and taking a jackhammer to that emotional intensity and that emotional transformation that we've been dealing with, which has been shown by Jupiter going back and forth through Scorpio, as I said, or as I've been talking about for a while. You know, that Jupiter in Scorpio had been going back and forth, retrograde and forward and back for a while. And now that it's moving forward, Jupiter in Scorpio, we're moving forward with our teachings. As I said a while ago, Jupiter in Scorpio is aspecting Mercury in Cancer as it moves forward. So to make it even more intense, we have Mars aspecting this Jupiter by transit. You see right here. Well, let me get this the YouTube chart here, and here it is. So as you can see, by aspect here, Mars is moving up to this exact aspect onto Jupiter. So you want to understand that Mars aspects 4 houses in front. Now these are special aspects, just like the video I did a couple days ago where I was talking about the special aspect of Jupiter onto Mercury. Again, it's one way. Jupiter, look at that aspect now. Go back and watch the video I did a couple days ago where Jupiter was aspecting Mercury, and it was going to be exact. It was exact a couple days ago. Now, again, you can see Mercury is now past it because Jupiter is now 20 degrees, 32 minutes. Mercury is now 21. So it's gone past the exact degree. Again, that's a one-way aspect from Jupiter onto Mercury. That's why now you want to be paying attention to these great teachings that come into your life that show up to teach you something, right? Because of Jupiter aspecting Mercury. Jupiter conferring that blessing onto Mercury as Mercury is going through Cancer, where we're trying to integrate information into the heart and through our intuition. Now we're seeing this one-way aspect of Mars onto Jupiter. And again, Mars is moving up to that aspect. The way these aspects work is the faster moving planet puts its aspect, or is either aspected or puts the aspect on the slower moving one. So Mars is moving up to the exact aspect. You want to look at the degrees. Jupiter's about 20 degrees. So watch and see as Mars gets closer to 20 degrees. Let's move it up. This is August 21st. I'm recording this live. Watch as the degrees of Mars rise. And then you can see the exact aspect. Right now, Mars is 1430. This is next week, or this is August 31st. Mars is 1430. Mars 1905, Jupiter 21. Mars 1943, Jupiter 21. Here's like the exact aspect will be September the 10th, Mars 21, Jupiter 21. Exact is about as the 20 is on the 11th, 9/11. September 11th, Mars is 2138, Jupiter's 2151. So that date, 9/11, is a pretty significant one, right? We've come to expect that to be something that has to do with even like a terrorist attack and whatnot. Very interesting, because this is also a 18-year return. This 9/11 is kind of like the 18-year return. I'm just working through this in real time of the actual 9/11. It's the Rahu return of that chart. So I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to show you September 11th, 2011. Or I'm sorry, 2001. And you want to look and see where Rahu was. So this is September 11th, 2001. Rahu was in Gemini in Ardra Nakshatra. And now this one we're talking about here is the same. Rahu, now it's in Punarvasu, but it's still Rahu in Gemini, and it's 9/11/2019, 9/11/2001. So you can see Rahu is about an 18 and a half year cycle. So it's interesting that this exact aspect of Mars onto Jupiter, again, which has really nothing to do with this other transit, except that it's basically 9 2-year cycles or something close to that. Yeah, Mars was over here Oh yeah, there was Mars K2 over here when we had 9/11 2001. But it's one sort of complete Rahu cycle. So you can see this, aside from the 9/11 date, just that Mars is moving up to this exact aspect onto Jupiter in Scorpio. And then it's going to continue, then it continues past it. Come on. Then it continues past it. But so right now, again, what this means is this is the one-way aspect from Mars. So this is the one-way aspect from Mars on to Jupiter. So Jupiter is not aspecting back. It's one way from Mars to Jupiter. So this means that, again, Mars is a destructive energy. It's trying to destroy something, and it's destroying something to make room for something else. So you got to get out of the limited backward thinking that Mars destroying something bad, one of the bad ones. It's not bad. If you want any growth in your life, you need to destroy ignorance. Nothing has ever grown in your life. Nothing new has ever grown in your life until you destroyed something old that makes room for the growth. You don't grow any flowers until you destroy weeds. And your mind has a lot of weeds. Your mind is full of weeds and bugs and parasites, and you need to get in there and destroy them before anything meaningful and creative can take place. So this aspect of Mars onto Jupiter, again, we talked about Mars is in Sattvic Leo now. It's aligned toward higher principles, and Mars takes, and whatever's motivating Mars, he spreads that nature all around. He spreads that nature all around to whatever he's influencing. And he's going to be influencing Jupiter in Scorpio, which is, as I've said, working through these higher teachings and principles and stuff like that. So Mars is taking that sattvic energy of Leo and that desire to destroy all of the bad, principles and vision and being out of sync. And he's trying to bring that sattvic intention to overcome and destroy a lot of these dark fantasies of Jupiter and Scorpio. As Jupiter's been going back and forth through Scorpio, like I said in a video a couple days ago, it's about maybe being prone to manipulation and coercion and demagoguery and people preying on your fears and bad teachings and all that stuff. That's what Jupiter going back and forth through Scorpio has been about. But again, it's also been about coming on the other side of that, about devotion, about spiritual practice, not just philosophy. Again, facing those dark fears and transforming them, and then coming to greater devotion to authentic teachers and Guru's grace and things like that. So again, Mars spreading his influence here is to kind of take a jackhammer even more to those bad teachings and all that crap that maybe has been making you stressed out and making you afraid, and focusing and concentrating Jupiter's energy on that real power, on that real transformation, on those real qualities of Lord Indra, who is the ruler of Jyeshta Nakshatra, and that mighty sovereign who was able to allow himself to be swallowed by the belly, swallowed in the belly of the beast, to then return the water to the kingdom, and so that everything could flourish. So Mars is bringing courage and power and discipline and focus to that Jupiter in Scorpio for the next, several weeks, right? Because it's now August 21st, and we saw by 9/11, it's going to be exact. By the way, I don't want to get all into the, 9/11. Do you think there'll be another terrorist attack? What do you think? That's just a coincidental calendar date. I don't put any big deal on that date in and of itself. Gregorian calendar dates are really not that. The only thing you can tell about that for sure is that the sun is probably in the exact same place. Other than that, the date, we don't have discrimination about things. And, I don't feel like making predictions about 9/11 date. So it's not important, that part of it. There's always possibility of danger. And yes, by the way, just the fact of Mars aspecting Jupiter is in this exact sort of conjunction that it's an explosive, there's a lot of explosive potential, no doubt. Again, I don't even need to say that anymore. There's explosive potential all around all the time now. So yes, it could be explosive potential in the world where there could be explosive stuff. Absolutely. It certainly could. Not because it's 9/11, though. That's just a Gregorian calendar date. It doesn't matter. But because of this Mars aspecting Jupiter, for sure. And it's a one-way aspect. Mars one-way aspects can be quite explosive. But again, besides that, and especially because it's aspecting a planet in Scorpio, but beside that part of it, what's also really important is this. What I think is more important is what hopefully is happening in your mind and consciousness and spirit and in the world in a larger context. You know, it takes no imagination at all to predict that there could be something blowing up that day, that there could be a terrorist attack. Oh, Sam predicted a terrorist attack. Wow, isn't he brilliant? They happen all the time. It could be anything. We could pick any day and we could see, there's protests in Hong Kong. See, he was right. There are shootings. See, he was right. There's shootings and there's stuff all the time now. And again, maybe something on a larger scale or whatever, perhaps. But the other thing that's really important about this one, and again, it could even mean, it could even show a more heightened potential, is that Mars is also very combust at this time. I've been talking about the combustion. So having said all of this sort of disclaimer that I just made about 9/11 or things blowing up and terrorizing and stuff like that, you remember I talked not too long ago about the combustion. Really important, this combustion here right now. Mars is 20 degrees. It's right behind the sun at the same time that it's aspecting Jupiter in Scorpio. So it could make for a very combustible sort of mix, because it's not just Mars aspecting Jupiter in Scorpio and Mars is in Leo, but Mars is also really combust at this time because the sun is also there and it's combustible because it's behind the sun. And so with all these things now piling up as I'm evaluating it, I do these things in real time often, like I'm doing this. It does make for, the possibility that there could certainly be a higher possibility of some kind of transformative explosive event, maybe missile, maybe literally like a terrorist attack or something more significant than what we're used to. Because again, it's so common now that it's hard to even know, or it's not even, there's really nothing even, there's no imagination about saying that there's going to be a big thing happen. It could be bigger than usual, though, around that time. Often you'll see it right before, like maybe the 8th, 9th, 10th. But again, in a larger context, you want to see, I just wanted to bring out this aspect. This is another example of these one-way aspects, and Mars one-way aspect onto Jupiter and Scorpio. What I'm really looking forward to it doing is bringing greater focus on our teachings, greater courage to embrace within each person, within each of you, this potential to really embrace a greater spiritual courage, to not be so fearful. All the spiritual people are so triggered now, so afraid of everything. Spiritual people, you're the ones that need to have some courage. But quote spiritual people, again, this is why I kind of rail against it a little bit. People that say they're spiritual, but they're not. They believe certain things, but then as soon as their worldview is pressured, it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen is you're either going to do your spiritual practice or you're not. And you're either going to be part of the problem or not. So many people that get so triggered by conspiracy theories and all this stuff are, quote, spiritual, quote, people. And it's not spiritual at all to just be triggered and losing your mind about everything that could possibly happen. Yes, the world is unstable and dangerous and all that stuff. But again, this what I really see with this Mars aspect onto Jupiter and Scorpio is spiritual courage, the spiritual warrior in its true sense. Not just some kind of bypassing or some kind of philosophy, but to do the practice, to really do the work, to really put that stuff in into practice. So you got a lot of people showed up. Shivakami said, "Oh, I got to teach right now," so she'll listen to it on the drive home. Okay, Shivakami, you'll hear your name mentioned on the drive home. And then some other people showed up, and a lot of people saying hi. Some people said, "How will it affect the stock market?" Who knows? I don't know. How's that? How's that for an answer? I might, the stock market. I've maintained for a while that the stock market is going to be very volatile, and up and down, and again, it takes nothing to make that sort of prediction, but especially it could have a devastating effect. Certainly, it's not a positive move. In my view, this one-way aspect of Mars to Jupiter is not positive for stock market and accumulated wealth. It's not going to be a boon. It's not a benefit, at least during that time. But again, because stocks go up and down, who knows? But this will not be a positive move overall, I don't see at all. And so someone said Brexit, here we go. Yeah, this should be coming around the time of that. It could definitely be a financial difficulty here. Financial, mainly because of the power that Scorpio represents, and also that that Leo represents. Because Leo is about power, it's about government and governmental power. In a worldly sense, we could really see more of the sort of bloodletting from the idiotic president of the United States and the trade policies and the kind of rudderless, now we're going to try to buy Denmark. Now I'm going to have a tantrum about this. I don't know. I really hope that what winds up happening, I'll give you my hope, at least in a political sense, is that people in our government, in the government of the U.S., finally get a backbone and start to speak out. I'm not expecting it. Again, that's why I'm not expecting that the government at this point is going to offer a solution. But it could. There could be a major cataclysmic event, I would say, if not a major worldly event, but maybe a major political kind of movement and revolution where several or many of these lawmakers who have been utterly, in deficit to their duties actually start stepping up. Like, for example, and taking on these vested interests, like standing up to, like, let's say, gun lobby, and start doing something about all these shootings, and actually having a backbone and political backbone, and maybe standing up to the president instead of trying to protect their hide and their skin for re-election. They actually start calling this out. If this were to happen en masse, it would be a pretty cataclysmic, transformative moment. And it could happen because if you look at the chart of the president, all this stuff is happening right on his moon Ketu, because he's got moon Ketu in Jeshta. So Jupiter going over that, Jupiter is always about things getting bigger. And now with this Mars one-way aspect onto that Jupiter, it's also aspecting his natal chart by transit. It could definitely blow up a lot of his sort of power, for sure. And by the way, we're already seeing it. We're seeing more and more the fabric starting to tear away. He's looking more and more, frankly, like a lunatic every day. And it's very scary, dangerous, and we're all kind of acclimated to it now. All of this would change if lawmakers would actually grow a spine. The reason that it's gotten this out of hand is because nobody has a spine in his own party. So with the recent, just to talk politics here for a second, the recent major break of that, the Scaramucci guy who has come out now just with a fist saying, I'm trying to rally people against him and all this. This could be the beginning of something where many of these lawmakers come out and start rallying against him, and the country starts to push back because his policies are really detrimental. He lies constantly about the impact of the trade war with China. He does nothing but obfuscate, lie in front of the public, back and constantly now. It's anybody who debates this is just so full of bias that they have no integrity anymore. Your lion eyes are showing you there's someone who never tells the truth anymore. And it's hurting his even within his own party. Even Fox News rebels against him now. So he's losing all of his even bedrock support because it's just getting too out of hand. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a political kind of uprising against him as Mars, as this kind of frustration sort of mounts. And I'm not saying from the left, I'm saying maybe from the right, from within his own party. That's one of the things I definitely could see by early September, because then you're going to have Congress back in session. They're going to have to start dealing with constituents again. A lot of these Republicans are getting just getting eviscerated when they went home because they're not dealing with this gun issue. It's so obvious that they're bought and paid for and just getting hammered. So when they got to go back into session and then they got to start answering for all of this insanity that's been happening, maybe some of them will get a backbone. Okay, so again, these things certainly affect the markets and all that stuff as well, and jobs, and again, the constant lying about these things. So the ridiculous nonsense about Greenland and what kind of, again, just like a lunatic. Hopefully the powers that be will start to step up, and that definitely could happen. So let's look at a couple things here. So, these are a few things that I would say. And as Colleen said, things are becoming more bizarre. Absolutely, more bizarre. And again, we're acclimated to it, but again, we're like a frog in a boiling pot. At some point, these things just become corrosive, even just to people who are supporters. After all, how much more can people support? How much shocking, okay, is the racism enough? Is the total lies too much? Is the absolute how many mass shooters have to come out and say that they were inspired by Trump? Now we're getting this whole conspiracy, QAnon group sprouting up. At what point? Now we get this buying Denmark and are buying Greenland, and today he said something like, "I'm the savior" or "the chosen one," or this is just like, what kind of insanity is going on? At some point, again, the left has been screaming about it, but the problem is not even him. It's that there's no courage on the part of his party, of the Republicans. They're going to destroy themselves, but I hope they don't destroy the country first. So hopefully, maybe this will show a backbone will be grown. There will be a spine grown by some of these people. That's a prediction that I'll make on some level, that because I know his chart, and because Leo is the sign of the king, the sign of the government. So I would say look forward to more and more outrage. Let's see if it does any good, or maybe it'll just be another kind of explosiveness thing and then kind of goes back into the shadows again. But aside from the politics and the external stuff of the world, this is, for you as a spiritual person, for you as a person in the world, you can, and as a person working through your karma and working through your spiritual practices and all of that stuff, there can be great benefit to getting down to the truth, getting down to the real nature of how much, again, you're putting into practice, how much you're working through your imagined fears, how much you're still programmed and triggered. Again, you hear me talking about these things, and yeah, I definitely pay attention to it. I'm up with it all the time. Doesn't define me. I'm not obsessed with it. I'm not despondent over it. Again, I'm hopeful that this can get turned around, but we'll just see what we'll see what we have. I mean, this world is what it is, and but nothing that we can do is ultimately going to save ourselves or save the world through the ego. We're all these divine beings, and the more chaotic the world gets, it can provide an amazing contrast to the silence and stillness of the self. And us spiritual people, those of us who are trying to really tap in and channel these higher energies, these are the moments that challenge us and compel us to do that, because we're the ones that should be able to see beyond just the just the manipulation and just the right versus left or this versus that. And, in the world situation, and tap into something deeper that's more eternal. The world has always been chaotic. It's always been corrupt. This is why, if you don't believe me, go back and read the stories from the Vedic teachings. Go read, especially the stories, the Puranic stories from the Puranas, like the Mahabharata and the Srimad Bhagavatam and the, Bhagavad Gita. It's all about corruption, and it's all about politics, and it's all about families and jealousy. They were, again, these stories were told as a mirror reflection to mirror the world we live in. And you don't think that the world was just as corrupt back then? It was just as corrupt, if not more. Again, it's very easy to think, and again, this is one of the big illusions, and it's one of the big illusions you should be very careful of. And I hear people all the time say, it's never been worse. The world has never been worse than it is. It's the worst it's ever been. Listen, it's not even close to the worst it's ever been. Not even close, okay? Right now, it looks like lunacy going on. But again, we had, 1,000 years of the Dark Ages where nobody was educated, where people died by the time they were 30. If you lived a long life, if you got diarrhea, it killed you. Everybody's teeth fell out of their head. I mean, this ain't even close to as bad as it's ever been. And in the midst of that, you had the great rishis and the great saints. They emerged out of that. Again, they had medicine and all like that. But again, don't get triggered and lose your mind. It's shocking to see. I think what really goes on, I'll just speak for myself. For me, what's shocking to see is the people that are so complicit and hypnotized by darker forces right now, and how many of them are there, and how corrupt and corrosive and coercive the structures are that are governing us. And they've always been that way. We're just now seeing like the scab sort of ripped off, and it's time to see it. But we'll get through it. And I definitely believe that. And the way we get through it is we show up and reflect and keep speaking the truth, and don't recoil from the truth, and don't get triggered by our paranoia. Again, this is what I was saying earlier, that it's up to the people that are hopefully, aligned with higher purpose, to not lose their mind and be triggered and be, so complicit in the paranoia. Okay, so that's our job. I say our job because I feel like I'm in it with you, and to be compassionate for the reasons that people are able to be coerced and whatnot. And so what these transits are doing right now, especially this Jupiter through Scorpio, has been a time for us to really get down and face and see it in ourselves, and see our own tendencies to be triggered and paranoid. Again, oftentimes the biggest problem with spiritual people is spiritual bypassing. Oh, I'm not like that. Oh, I'm not that. And it's not true. We try to spiritually bypass all those dark tendencies, but I witness it myself. People that get readings from me all the time, and there's so much in a denial about their own dark qualities. They try to bypass them. Oh, I'm not really like that. And they're totally like that. They're totally triggered and paranoid and worried, and not doing any of the practices. They're not facing any of their fears. They're not getting in there and actually doing that work. They're totally enmeshed in the ego and all the problems of the world, and the problems of their money, problems of the family, problems of this. It's just the same old regurgitated fear of death. Don't know who I am. They don't know who they are. They're attached to the ego. It's just now there's a more sophisticated explanation for it. I'm spiritual, so it's not really that. It's just this. No, it is that. It's that. So this Mars moving up to this aspect onto Jupiter is really bringing that enlightened warrior, that spiritual warrior of Mars and Leo, who is unflinching and really looking at the truth, Go back and watch the Mars in Leo video that I did, because I tracked its transit through Magha, which is about getting clear about your teachings, to Purva Falguni, which is sharing those things. And he's going to be sharing, it'll be in Purva Falguni, where we want to share that wisdom. Let me move this. He'll be in Purva Falguni, where we want to share that wisdom, and he's sharing it through aspect to Jupiter. Mars in Leo, now that we've hopefully, as he's gone through Magha Nakshatra, really reconnected with the divine teachings, with the Pitris, with the divine ancestors, we're holding that wisdom. Then he keeps going through Purva Falguni, ruled by the god Bhagha, the god of delight, where we delight in sharing that wisdom. He's going to delight in sharing that wisdom with Jupiter in Scorpio. So he brings courage and assistance and discipline into Jupiter in Scorpio, who has been learning these great life lessons after encountering our triggering and dark fantasy paranoia. Mars is saying, okay, don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Face it. You need to face it. You need to fight the good fight. You need to not flinch in battle. The battle isn't with the external enemies. It's with your own fear and darkness. So just sit with it, be disciplined, and overcome that fear and that paranoia. That's internally. And that's where the battlefield is. That's what the real Kurukshetra is in the Bhagavad Gita, the battlefield that Lord Krishna is on and Lord Arjuna is on. It's the battlefield within your own mind and your own delusions. Just like Krishna says, your problem isn't that you're on a battlefield and you have to kill all these people. Your problem is you don't know the nature of the self, that you think you're the doer. You think this world is the ultimate reality, and you think you're ultimately this warrior who is going to kill people and who is going to be killed himself and all that. And that's the problem, not all this other stuff. The problem is you don't know the nature of the self. And the world is a mess. It's always been a mess. And yes, all that stuff is true that you're so attached to. And yes, you got to go out and kill them all. I hear you. But guess what? The problem isn't that. The problem is you don't know the nature of the self. Because he who kills and he who is killed, they're all illusions. They're all part of the play of karma, and I am behind all of that. I, as the master of dharma and karma and universal wisdom, am behind the whole thing. So go out there and fight, perform your duties in the world, and remember the nature of the self and be established in dharma. Remembering the self in everything you do, because you're not the doer. That's the only problem. There's only one problem and one solution. The problem is you think you're the doer and you've lost the self. So that's it. That's like, as long as we think we're the doer and that we, meaning this limited self, is the real self, then everything in the world is going to define us. What happens with global warming, this, that, then I'm going to die, we're going to die, humanity, right. It's horrible. Nobody wants that. It doesn't mean you don't show up and try to help, but you don't lose the self. And I'm really blessed to see an embodiment of this so long. This is why I go and see my guru Amma so much. And again, when you're blessed to be able to see a vision and an embodiment of these teachings decade after decade and year after year, it reconnects you with that. Because you see, okay, you see an example. So we've lost the nature of self, and this aspect of Mars onto Jupiter is really this opportunity to reconnect with that self. And this, I'll say this mantra to peace, this peace mantra to end, because I got to run here, but it's that Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. That's the universal mantra, which means may all beings everywhere be happy. And you can chant that mantra and feel peace prevailing around the earth. Don't get so triggered. Don't get so angry. Don't get so worked up, even angry at the people that are lying and all of this. You know, if you're holding a lot of anger in your heart, it's just going to trigger back on you. You know, even though I talk about this stuff, I don't hold animosity and anger toward anyone, even the president and all like that. I'm sorry that he's in a position that he shouldn't be in. He's living out of alignment with his dharma. He should have stayed a reality TV star. And we're all suffering for it because of our collective delusion. But again, the way to have compassion for those people and him and all like that is to not meet it with anger and hostility. Meet it with intelligence and stay grounded in your own life and your own dharma and your own purpose. So I'm going to end with that mantra again and then end it on that. But it's Lokaha samasta sukhino bhavantu. Lokaha samasta sukhino bhavantu. Lokaha samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.